Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Lucid, and I'm once again joined by Sai.
Hello, this is Sai, and I'm once again joining Lucid and casting a live turn in our tournament finals.
Indeed. So it's pretty exciting. This is turn 50, and turn 50 is the turn that I'm allowed as the caster and host to put these up on YouTube. So shortly after the time of recording this, real time, probably like a week, they'll start going up on YouTube, and you'll be watching Sai and I ramble. So that's what we're thinking about. This looks like it's going to be a pretty short episode, but maybe we'll take the time to make it long again by talking about one of the paths to victory here. Because not much is happening, and I think we've peaked at the turn. I don't think there's any major battles either. So,
There are some interesting diplomatic ramifications from this turn, but yeah, relatively little in terms of actual combat to talk about. This first one, which Lucid has pulled up, is very interesting to me because I did not expect Tianchi and Xibalba to be allied. That's news to me, actually.
right.
I actually had no idea that that was coming. And it makes a lot of sense from Xibalba's perspective to secure at least one of their borders. Because,
I think it makes a ton of sense for Zabalba. You remember he's a little pissed with Erythia because Erythia had like ended their nap on him, and they were gonna fight, but then they realized like Arco had kind of double crossed them or something. So
yeah.
not
But
pissed is not the right word, but
this puts him in a much better situation than I had thought that he was in, because I was actually very worried about Xibalba's long-term chances of survival as they, research up and rebuild their army. But if Tianchi is not going to be fighting them, that puts them in a great position because I don't think any of their other neighbors are in position to actually kill them.
yeah, I think Gath might be able to if they wanted to. They have the tech advantage. They have the types of troops that could go head to head with Aussies. I'm not sure if they will choose to, though. I don't think they will.
I don't. I think that would be a close war. I don't think that
Really?
that's an obvious Gath advantage in the way that a 1v2 of some of Xibalba's other neighbors might be. And that's for two reasons. One is that Xibalba has significantly more Ocelotls than Gath has Seer. So if you're just doing like a sacred comparison, Xibalba has more meat on the field than Gath does. And the second thing is that
Okay, they're tied in
the
army supply, but I'd agree. It's more sacreds for Zabalba. So,
So once you get to the point where both of these people are just bringing these things and buffing them, and we'd seen Gas Army, right? Like, so we knew what they were doing. They were really relying on their Seer and Shadim to do the killing for them. These Ocelotls have shock resistance.
well, yeah, so you
So
just
you're
make more Seir. You don't make the Shadim versus them.
right, but you're talking about like fighting into someone who has more of the same sacreds that you do, a very comparable bless, right? Because both these guys are kind of going for scales focus and relatively similar levels of buff efficiency because Shabalba already has weapons of sharpness. So like once Shabalba hits alt 7, I don't see them losing that.
I mean, I think Gath can have Will of Fates. Gath can have easier. I don't know. They probably are both gonna have weapons of
I
sharpness.
think I think Gath can win this war if they fight in a timing where Shabalba is significantly behind them in effective battlefield magic. So like if Gath hits, let's say, alt 8, like you were saying,
Right.
actually bring, Will of the Fates and Fog Warriors to that battle, then maybe yeah, they can win in that circumstance.
Okay.
But they also do need to cast all the good spells, and their last army didn't. They didn't cast Weapons of Sharpness.
Right.
They didn't cast Fog Warriors. So the stack that Gath has, like on the field now, which we saw, right? Like we saw their script. I don't think that that beats Shabalba's current armies.
Yeah, I agree. And certainly, it's going to be a hard war. I don't think it's a. I don't think it like it's a war that Gath would take of his own choosing as a 1v1. So, but
Yeah.
if
So
maybe Zabalba makes a move, Zabalba attacks Erythia, Gath says, "All right, fuck it, I'll help." Like I could see that happening.
in any sort of 2v or 1v2, I think that Shabalba loses. I don't think that they beat Erythia plus Gath, for example.
Right.
If like they're actually committed. I don't think that Shabalba beats Vediheim plus Gath either. For
Yeah.
very similar reasons. So I'm not saying that Gath can't like benefit from fighting Vediheim. I just don't think that in a 1v1 it would
Yeah.
actually work to their favor.
In short, I think I agree with your main point, which is that by securing what seems to be, this sharing a global is a great way to kind of reinforce a partnership or a NAP or an alliance between TNG and Zabalba. It makes it really hard for Zabalba to die. I think that's
So
true.
that puts them in a way better diplomatic situation than I thought that they were in, because I was worried that there being one of the junior remaining powers would put them in a very precarious position of being eaten while, for example, Gath and Pangea focus Vedheim, maybe Erythia and Tianchi focus Xibalba. And if
Right.
that's not happening, then Xibalba's actually doing great. And they actually can start catching up on that tech while still spamming out their sacreds and farming that blood.
Yeah, so Tianchi is now a partner. So Earthblood Default did go up by Tianchi, and they're getting the majority of it. Xibalba's getting, I guess, like 8 gems a turn or something. And then,
Whatever 40% of 20 is.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's 8 gems.
And then
8 to
Tianchi, I think they're splitting it even. Galegate with Erythia. Is that fair?
That sounds right.
Yeah, they basically got a little bit over a whole global. Basically, they got one global to themselves.
Yeah. Basically, if you look at the gem graph, it's going to be about accurate.
Yeah.
And then the Maelstrom was a split between Pan and Vedheim.
Okay. And we don't have confirmation of that here, but you said that from the Discord. And you suspect that's 50-50.
I actually don't know what the split is.
Okay. So that is cast successfully, and that steals it from Erythia. And this is a huge blow to Erythia because Erythia's thing was going to be like, okay, we're going to scale through like Maelstrom and Wish and Nexus. And getting this stolen really sucks the wind out of their sails. So. And it's really great for Vedheim because I think Vedheim, I had been feeling when we were talking about him recently, like Vedheim had, like they just needed a little something. I just felt like, yeah, they're kind of big. It's a great, really strong nation. They've been playing really well. They've got a great build. But okay, they've eaten Utgard now, so their position's a little better. I just felt like they were still missing something. And I feel like Maelstrom is exactly what they need to just close the gap and make me feel like, okay, they got it. Did we lose you, Sai?
No, I'm still here.
Okay.
I was reading some Discord stuff, and I don't know how much of this I can share.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, be careful. Don't share stuff that you don't think they might want people to know.
Yeah. So the short of the long of it, since this is the live turn, I think that it's fair to say this, is that Vedheim expressed to Pangea that they recognize that Pan is like top 2, and that they are not. So that's kind of coloring the diplo between those two, in terms of like, if Vedheim were to go to war to someone at Pan's behest, because they're kind of allies at this point,
right?
They're not going to be taking the first stab because they see themselves as being smaller and weaker.
Which I think is fair. But army-wise, how are they? Let's see. I feel like Vedheim's army graph lies though, because they get, this is rated by size, and so their size 1s count, half as much as a human, which I don't think is fair. But...
yeah. with the power of those Rimvedi in particular, it's definitely hard to value that based on size.
Right. Yeah, it's a half a human worth of value packed into that little Rimvedi. Okay. Okay. Wait, so you're saying they split it with Pangea though? Or that was what you were saying earlier?
So Pangea had mentioned that they were partly funding it, but they had expected it to be going up a turn beforehand.
Okay.
So I don't know what the actual split is, or if it was actually still split, like if the first casting had failed and Vedheim then overcast it again.
Okay. So we'll see what indeed it is once they tell us.
But the fact that all of these globals are being split is so interesting to me, because this is not the way that I play.
Yeah, this is not the meta for even, I would say it's common for globals to be split sometimes, but I wouldn't say it's common for almost every global to be split. Like this is split, this is split, this is split. So half the globals are split in this.
The only global that I've anecdotally split was a Nexus Overcast. And that was more to deny it to someone else than to cast it myself.
Yeah. I think it makes sense to split if you know you're going to be fighting with somebody over it. Like if Agartha and I are both in good positions in the game and I want to put up Earthblood Deepwell, like I know Agartha's thinking about it. Then I'll be like, hey, why don't we just split it rather than fight over it? Because I just know we can each way, like we'll just ruin each other's position over casting Earthblood Deepwell all game. We never get to use the Earth Gems. So
Yeah. My impression though is that many of these splits are mostly being used to reinforce alliances rather than
yeah,
the actual gems.
that's true. I think I was thinking that too. It's like marrying off a daughter or something in a medieval like court. We'll reinforce this alliance via marriage of a global.
Yeah, actually. And in Vedheim and Pangea's case, the overcast of Maelstrom was largely to deny it to Erythia because both of them were
Right.
worried about it being used to fund wish farming.
Right. Which is a legitimate concern. And I think the fact they've taken it away now, poor freaking Erythia. I think it like defangs their position entirely. Not to say it's an unwinnable position. I'm not saying that.
Yeah,
But-
if we have time, I actually do want to talk about Erythia at the end of this episode.
Okay, well, let's go through the battles because we can probably just jump to it. So this is a Gaija and a Shaman, some Great Eagles. So it looks like this fort for Arco has been abandoned. So there was a small army inside, and it consolidated down here with what was left from the capital. So I think there was an army in the capital, maybe another squad somewhere over here. What was left in this fort left, came down here and consolidated. So to me, that tells me Arco and Vedheim are talking. And he gave this fort to Vedheim here, and Vedheim moved the Eagles on top, popped it, and they'll probably be jumping in at this turn.
Right, because otherwise the thug alone would have been enough.
Right.
By moving the Eagles on, that clearly says exactly what you were saying, that he knew that it was going to be empty so he could bring that siege strength.
Right. This is another scary army. I mean, it's possible that if this army all of a sudden got Will of Fates or something, it could easily kill the Seir here. So
That's so many mages.
I know.
Oh, God.
that's so many.
That's all of his mages.
Yeah.
I think he's actually marching it up towards Xibalba.
Oh, you think so? He's going
So
to...
the reason that I think that is that if not, why is it not in his capital right now?
I think what he wanted to avoid, he wanted to combine, I think, the army here and here. And I think he wanted to avoid having one army trapped in the fort with the other army here, like, hey, I'll come join you. And then, like, Gath could take his army and march it into this, and then they die. And they get defeated
That's
in
possible.
detail.
Yeah. So the reason that I'm thinking that he might want to march it into Xibalba, again, this is speculative, I don't actually know what's going on in Arco's brain right now, is that out of all of the players in the game, the only person, in my opinion, that he has a legitimate grievance against in any respect is Xibalba, because that was the player with whom he'd gotten into that big argument
Right.
about the nap break, right? Everyone else who he's fighting, it's his fault, right? Like Vedheim and Tingy, he'd invited to go take his stuff, right?
Gath was being
Gath-
eminently reasonable, so far as we can tell.
Exactly. Like Gath just wanted his stuff back that Arco had bullied out of him
Right.
earlier. So there's no reason that he should have a grudge against Gath. The only player whom I could see him having any sort of grievance against, even if we don't agree that it's reasonable to feel aggrieved, is Xibalba.
Right.
And there is a lab in that TNG province just to his north. So he can take that province, put all the remaining gems that he might have onto his mages, and then go for a final showdown against Xibalba. That's the
Okay.
only thing that I can think of that he might want to do with his like last remaining army.
Well, I tell you what,
Otherwise,
I am not
yeah.
going to complain if he does that. That'll be a fun final battle. And, you know, I I would rather he try to make it, for many turns, I would have rather he like tried to play what I think was an eminently playable position. But
he's clearly chosen not to do that.
he's clearly chosen not to do that, but he's going to give us a show on the way out. And I'm not going to complain about that too much. So this is a spectacular force. Let's see if he already had it scripted. He did. So he's already got it. Well, not perfectly, but so he doesn't have all the people on Guard Commander yet, but
What's the Etten geared with?
oh gosh.
Okay, yeah, that's a proper thug.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is either go north to fight Xibalba for a final showdown against his hated rival, or it's going back onto his capital to try to fight Gath in a final showdown there. But either way, we're going to see one last battle out of Arco,
Right.
which is fun. I love
Yeah,
that.
and this is so much better than just like leaving your army to sit unscripted and like because this is how you learn a ton about Dominions too. It's like, okay, well I've got this army here. It's like a scenario. What can I do with it? How can I kill this Seir stack or how can I kill this Aussie stack? And you do
How
that,
can
you
I
get
cause
better
the
at
most damage.
you get better at Dominions by trying it. So at least I do. So Tianchi's got this fort under siege. There's a thug here. This actually is a kind of cool thug. It's worth pulling up and watching. Super budget.
In addition to the thug itself being pretty efficient, it's also worth noting that what this means geopolitically is that Gath is saying to, TNG or anyone else that might want to take a swing, hey, this cap is mine.
I think when he won that other fight so decisively, it was basic. In my mind, it was decided. Last turn, it was once he crushed that Arco army, I was like, okay, he's going to get the cap. That being
I
said,
agree. Yeah.
there's still this
But
army
you don't
here.
want to pick a fight with TNG. So by doing this, he's basically denying TNG the opportunity to try to take Arco's cap for himself.
TNG, it doesn't look... I think before Erythia took this, I was like, okay, TNG's going to race over here and try to get the cap. The second Erythia took this and then they didn't negotiate, or Erythia didn't accept giving it back up, basically denied TNG the ability to come over here and take this. So
yeah, we talked about this actually, but yeah.
And TNG's accepted it. This army has dispersed. It's come over here and it's killed the last of the Pythium forces here, which we can watch.
Yeah, this is the mage-only army.
Right. But
this is why you need troop support, gentlemen.
Right. I mean, they're making a pretty good front line of Skelly spam, but it's about to run out. And Wailing Winds, they're running off the field, unfortunately.
Yeah. I guess I should have said, you don't actually always need troops. I mean, I've played Sorrow. You can run Sorrow stacks of literally just enemies and have great results. So you don't always need troops. But yeah, for this particular army, actually, it looks like Wailing Winds did all the work there.
It did all the work. Yeah, they all ran.
Well, that's that for Pythium. Actually, that is that for Pythium.
Yeah,
right?
well, the army's that he's got one Larthug here. This is all that's keeping him in the game. He has another Larthug here on top of a fort. So
but he needs to move that off the fort in order to have another province to...
Right. So if TNG protects all the non-fort provinces adjacent to this, and then magic phases on top of this guy, or just takes this and protects all the all the provinces he could move to. TNG's on his way out. It's not TNG, Pythium, yeah.
I still have to give props to Pythium for sticking it to TNG as hard as he can for as long as he can. That's very admirable.
Yeah, I mean, I think when this war started, you and I were both saying Pythium's just going to get completely rolled, and these guys probably aren't even going to stop to take a breath. And he's taken his pound of flesh and made it take a long ass time. So pretty good there. And I think he played to kind of comment on Pythium as he's on his way out of the game. Like we were saying, he played really, really well tactically. It just strategically, he just kind of got behind the ball and then couldn't fiddle his way out with good tactics.
He was a little bit behind on where he could have been with a different build as early as the first year. And then when his first war didn't end decisively, so he was kind of stuck in this prolonged engagement with Agartha where he wasn't able to finish the deal, so to speak, he kind of was in a position to be eaten.
Right.
And then, diplomatically is probably the bigger thing, right? These two big powers, which had just concluded a big war, were going to go kill him. That probably was an even bigger problem than his build issue. But he was always playing from a lower position from where an LA Pythium could have been at that same turn number, I think.
Right. And all those things matter, right? Because the better position you're in, the less likely you're going to be in a war that stalls out. The less likely you're going to look like an easy, quick snack for some of your neighbors, which is definitely how TNG and Erythia were thinking about him. So he definitely didn't turn out to be easy or quick, but you can argue he did eventually turn out to be a snack.
Yeah. So great tactical play. But this is a player who I think actually could benefit from... So I think the vast majority of Dominion's play is, you really just have to kind of play the game. This is one of the only positions in which I'm seeing someone who I think could benefit a little bit more from theory crafting. Trying out more builds and kind of, seeing where you are on turn 10 in terms of research and province count and so on.
Yeah. Okay, so that covers that war front. Agartha, it looks like, is sitting still. We have the Storming of Ulm, which I think is the other... I don't want to call it noteworthy because there's nothing inside, but it was an event. It did happen.
Yeah, this is a...
Slingers versus Murder Cats from Hell.
Yeah. It's not so much a big event so much as it is a mile marker, but he did lose to Camazotz.
He lost to Camazotz. It wasn't free. And yeah, so Ulm is now...
Camazotz is the singular, actually. The plural is Camazotzob.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. The Mayan language has ob as the plural for some of the things. So Aitz is the singular, and then Aitzab is the plural.
Ah, very cool. Catches a thing. Okay. So I think that wraps up this war for Xibalba. Xibalba is totally done, is now a free agent. Nothing else left to grab, so far as I can tell.
Yeah. And you can kind of see here, we talked about this at the very end of the last episode, the limitations of his ambition. All he wanted was Ulm's cap circle.
Right.
He was not willing to argue with Vedheim or Tianqi about getting more land. He's just going to take what he can get. And he's comfortable with that, and he's just going to go back to research and blood farming.
I want to say before we move off that I think that's a valid thing. I think we can be like, oh, he should have had more ambition or argued harder. Clearly it's paid off. Like he's didn't pick a fight with Tianqi about it, kind of let Tianqi vulture, has good relations with Tianqi. And that might be the difference between him living and dying in this game, and he's confident in his ability to play well and scale as the game goes on. So he's kind of bought himself a seat at the table in the late game by making that deal. So maybe, anyway.
Yeah. I do think that just, from the very early game when he could have eaten Joman, that he should have done that.
Oh, for sure.
And then from the Arco War, he should have been more decisive with that and, built around the super combatants and tried to push.
I don't actually know what more he could have done. I mean, he could have not lost as many Aussies, right? But once he did, I don't know if he could have done a ton more. Like he was already doing raiding, and a lot of his raiding was getting shut down. And then he'd lost a ton of momentum. And
it's more of a paying attention thing in that he had those advancement cast death mages, for example, without having researched thaumaturgy.
Yeah.
That he just didn't put enough effort into his turns to win his war against Arco as well as he could have.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Okay, so I think we've covered that. Pan, I don't think anything's happened. Let's go through these things, make sure I didn't miss anything interesting here. This was the last Battle of Pythium. This is the Arco army moving out. These are all the thugs.
Lark.
Oh, this is the sickle farm going off. Oh, there's an arena coming up.
Gleaming gold.
Yeah, we got the best events. Where's my magical laboratory?
Magic item treasury under magic resources.
Look at this. Staff of Elemental Mastery. I got 2 soul contracts. Why don't I get this kind of luck in real games when I get luck 3? It's ridiculous.
Do you not run luck 3?
I run luck 3 a lot. I can't remember the last time I got a Staff of Elemental Mastery and 2 soul contracts or the equivalent. It's nuts.
It's my LA Abyssea game, actually.
It's so good.
2 soul contracts at least. Which is kind of funny because I was major blood power and I could have paid my own soul contracts if I really wanted them.
Yeah, but I mean, still, it's like plus 180 blood slaves. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I think we've talked about all that. We're only 25 minutes into this, so let's do Path to Victory for Erythia, maybe?
Oh, this is a hard one, actually. Yeah. So I'm not going to go so much into a Path to Victory, so much as a thing that they should be doing right now, which is, dude, start summoning troops. Like, you have your mages, your research is toppest tier, you are still the research leader in this game. You need troops. You need cubes, you need liches, you need something, right? In order to actually give your army a bite. Because all of these Zadukados, they're just going to melt if they get surrounded by Aussies, for example. You need something going for them, and as Arco has so clearly shown, you need to buy some time even if you're going for an evocation strategy.
Yeah.
So Erythia had gone into this talking about making those green lions, right? That's what his excuse was for putting up Maelstrom in the first place. I don't see any green lions. So if he has been summoning any of them, he certainly doesn't have that many. And in my opinion, cubes would be even better, actually, in particular as an Aussie counter, because until those Aussies get Army of Giants, and if you don't put Army of Giants on your own cubes, then the cubes are going to swallow them just as well as they can swallow any other smaller unit.
Right. You have to fail a defense check, though, right?
Even if they succeed, they still take 1 damage, and Okay. So, but when you have enough cubes, they can still do quite a bit of damage against those sorts of elite secrets.
Right.
But that's just an example. Erythia needs something to actually get their army count up, not just in terms of like, showing up on the graphs, but also just in terms of actually having an effective troop deterrent for
Yeah.
whoever they're fighting. Whether they're fighting Pangea or Xibalba or whoever, right now they're just completely unprepared. And
Yeah.
that's scary to me. Similar to how like I was looking at Erythia's armies earlier and I was saying these armies are not ready, right? Like they're gonna get dropped by something. And I had been thinking Foul Vapors when we'd first seen it.
Right.
And it wound up being
Way
like
scarier.
yeah, it wound up being that Vediheim
Bone
god.
grinding
But
horror.
yeah,
Yeah.
but regardless, you have to have these countermeasures in place. And right now, the countermeasure that he needs, like, strategically speaking, is troops, and he doesn't have it. So I think that
Yeah.
Erythia is actually in a very precarious position where he looks fine, right? Like his income looks great. He's sharing a global, so his diplomatic situation isn't awful. He's still the research leader of this game somehow, in spite of being, very like bottom-ish middle of the pack in terms of size. But he is food right now.
Yeah. I agree with
And
that.
I don't even know if the other players recognize this, but he
Yeah.
needs to fix that fast.
Yeah. I think he's so much. I think there's a conflict in a way. Like we're like, okay, summon all these things. On one hand, what you want to do, because he's almost certainly got wish now, right? I expect there's a wish farm going. Or either that or he's very close to it. And
If he doesn't have a wish farm going, he's messed up somehow.
So he probably has a wish farm going. There's no way we're really going to find out. And he's probably not going to tell us. So presumably there's one wish farm going. And each wish farm you get, because he's alchemizing back into pearls, the water, you get 25 of each type. And then when you alchemize them all, they pay for themselves. But the pearls, they're going back perfectly. So you get basically 12.5 pearls a turn from a wish farm. Isn't that right? Or something like that?
Yeah, it's 12.5, yeah.
Yeah.
If you do full alchemy for everything and don't actually use any of the other gems, it's 12.5 pearls. Yeah.
So people are like, oh my God, 12.5, infinitely scalable. True. But
it scales slowly.
12.5, you could get territory that gives you 12.5 gems a turn, It's also 12.5 pearls, but you can, because you're doing wish, the exchange rate once you're doing wish every turn with gems is like a pearl for every 2 other types. So you could say it's 25 of another gem type.
If he's actually using water gems effectively, such that he's not alchemizing them, then it becomes a little less efficient, right?
Right.
That's a major part of that math there.
So ideally, he'd be looking for summons that aren't water gems or pearls. Even though
he's looking for liches, in my opinion. That's one of the biggest things that you can do, because they're a very efficient death gem based summon that's a mage. But he's also looking for units.
He needs some troops. The lions and so Manifest Vitrol's water, and so is cubes. That's Vile Cube, whereas Vile Water. That's water.
Yeah.
What are the best, do you think? I mean, like we have whites here, which are pretty good for death as well. If you do Legions of Whites, this is a good summon.
Yeah, Legion of Whites is indeed Conjuration 9, so it's very, very late game, but it's a very efficient way of turning gems into troop power.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what else could he do that's non-water or pearl-based for troops.
Great Eagles in air, I think, are actually fairly efficient.
Those are pretty good.
I really like those guys.
Yeah. Great Eagles. He could do Draconians, maybe. These scale as the game goes on, too, because you get this Draconian Chief can summon more.
There are mods that make Draconians good, but in vanilla, Draconians are very bad units.
I'm not sure I fully agree, whereas I've lost the game to somebody spamming Draconians.
You probably lost the game to the econ that player had in order to be able to spam Draconians.
No, I mean, he put an army together I couldn't kill that was filled up with Draconians. But anyway, it was Olio who's supposed to be in the finals.
Draconians have one attack.
Yeah, but they're beefy, they're big. He got weapons of sharpness on them. It was really the mages. 4. Yeah, it was mostly the mages, but they were cracking forts. Okay. You can't nuke them from orbit.
If you have a pile of mages that you're planning on doing all of your damage, then you can also use Binogres as troops.
Right. I mean, that could be Erythia, right? Erythia has really good mages. So Binogres have the weakness, they have really bad MR.
Yeah. But they are mindless. So in order to mass convert them, you need arcane dominance rather than mastering slave.
Right. Yeah. So, but if you do, and that's the sort of the thing, if you don't do that many Vine Ogres, it's pretty good because nobody's going to cast Arcane Dominance. But if you're like all in on Vine Ogres, it gets really ugly. I've done that once where somebody had like 200 Vine Ogres or something, and I was like, Arcane Dominance, those are mine now, thank you. And then all the mages they were protecting were like,
Yeah, often the time that you actually see that come into play is often in Undead Mastery.
Yeah.
Like if you hit a Solaria player
Right.
that's relying on long dead hordes with it. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. But I think you're right. He needs troops. He's giving off super hard food vibes to me. He needs troops, but I don't think he's going to have enough troops anytime soon to like go out and win a war. He needs troops to just not die. So I think it's like you want to be greedy and do this wish thing, but in order to do that, you actually need to pay to have an army that people are scared of and don't want to fight. And then if you do the wish thing, the cost of getting so we said a wish is either 25 other gems or 12 pearls a turn. But the cost of setting up a new one of these factories, because you can scale it, is also pretty high. You summon a guy, so it's 100 pearls. Then you have to Gift of Reason him. That's like 25 pearls or whatever it is.
It's actually more like 120 pearls because you have to use your wish caster to wish for him.
Right. So yeah, and then by the time you made him a commander, we're looking at almost 150, and you're getting an Astral 5. So then you have to put a Robe of the Magi on him, Ring of Wizardry, or you have to empower him, right? Crystal Coin, Starshine Skullcap. By the time you add it all up, it's almost like, I feel like it's around like 400 pearls-ish, maybe less, 350 or something. I don't know if you've ever cracked the math, but it's a lot to get a new Wishcaster. And then when you got it, it's a long payback time. You know, like if you're paying 300 gems for something that's going to give you, or 300 pearls for something that's going to give you 12 pearls a turn.
About 250 if you do it as efficiently as possible.
Okay. So yeah, it's a 20 turn payback. This early in the game, it might make sense to get another Wishcaster or two. So like maybe you get 3, but
20 turn payback is massive.
It's right? Massive.
That's a massive sunk cost.
Right. Because if we're looking at it, you only get to do that like if the game goes to turn 90, you're only getting 2 of those cycles. So there's not a lot of time for it to pay itself back.
I generally don't think that it's worth it unless you can use that Wishcaster for other stuff, like not just for gem farming, but also for like actual offensive, big astral stuff.
Yeah, and the other nice thing about just being in the Wish business is that gem types become more exchangeable, so you can try to funnel all your gems into one type.
It's basically the sort of thing that you really only want to invest in when you also have Nexus. Because that makes wishing for gems itself much more efficient because those other gem types convert back into pearls directly from your just spending them.
Right.
And then that also makes things like liches massively more efficient, right? Because those death gems turn back into pearls, at least, a quarter of them do.
Yeah, so that's the thing, is that with his particular build, he doesn't get a high astral mage. Now, does he have luck? He has luck. I don't know. Do you know if there's oh no, he doesn't have luck. He has misfortune.
Yeah, he's got misfortune too.
So how does he get to cast? So to cast Nexus, it's actually not as hard as casting Wish. You have to be Astral 8 to cast Nexus. You have to be Astral 9 to cast Wish.
You generally empower a golem for it, honestly, because you want the caster to be mindless.
Okay. So, it doesn't look like this is providing any easy roads.
You can get Astral 3 on your national mages from the king.
Yeah.
But, even if... So, first of all, that's kind of rare, right? You have to roll...
These twice. It's 1 in 16.
1 in 16.
Yeah.
So, if you're making them the whole game, you are going to hit one, but, even then, it's only +1 on a golem. And having a mindless caster for your global is actually very high value.
Yeah. Okay, so you empower a global up. You have to empower the golem up to be probably Astral 5, and then find your way into a Robe of the Magi, and then fill all the other golem slots up. You can also potentially do some of the artifact boosters. but a lot of those have really bad side effects that would actually help you. Either they're going to add insanity, or they'll have a chance where you get like yeeted with the what's the 2 astral 2 fire thing.
Oh yeah, that's the one that draws horrors, and it
Yeah,
has actually a separate horror roll that's not reliant on like the general horror attack thing,
right.
which means that even Astrovies are susceptible to it.
Yeah. So yeah, there's some kind of shortcuts you can take, but it's an expensive thing. I feel like he kind of here's I guess what I'm trying to say is I feel like you kind of want a lot of momentum as you go into getting all these things set up, because they're like kind of expensive. Like getting a wish farm set up, especially when you don't have it on your god, really expensive. Getting a wish caster, pretty expensive. I mean, a nexus caster, pretty expensive. Banking up the gem so it's not going to get dispelled, really expensive. And then it's like, and then once you do it, people are probably going to attack you and try to kill you. It's actually kind of a hard game plan. It's not an easy thing to do. It's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I actually don't know if Erythia knows what his game plan is, because the lack of armies to me says that he's kind of grasping at this point.
To me, the lack of armies I read as greed. I read as we're doing Nexus, we're putting everything in towards Nexus, or we're putting everything in towards wish farming. That's the only way I interpret it.
The reason that I don't believe that's true is that he is still doing other generic summons.
Oh, yeah,
so
he's
he
doing
has
golems. That's not really helping him on his path to getting Nexus.
Yeah, but he's also doing all the national summons. So like when he first did his Hecaterad, I'm like, okay, great, awesome. This is your big army nature caster. Like you need these guys, right? So go, put an army together that's using them. But then he didn't, right? Like that Hecaterad is still sitting in his capital doing nothing, or maybe forging stuff. He has a Hesperide, which is again very efficient summon, right? This is a fire astral mage. Great if you need another astral mage in your army or a big fire mage for some reason, right? Like if you're in the case where you're spending gems and converting them into military power, this is a great unit, and it's awesome that it's part of your national roster, right? Like, I mean these guys are astral 3, so maybe that's his wishcaster. I don't know, but this is not a scaling thing, right? Like this is a good unit thing that you're summoning if you're putting together an army.
Yeah,
but he's not putting together an army, so I don't know what he's doing.
All right, so you and I are together on first thing he needs to do is put together a good army, even if he doesn't use it, if it's just there to defend himself. I want to go to a positive thing though. What is it he needs to do to win the game? And I think I'm going to throw this out there because this is the thing that came to me as this is the winning move. Is he needs to split Nexus with somebody, and he needs to be very careful about who he splits it with. So I think he picks a player, he splits Nexus, they both go halvesies on a pretty high cast, and then they stay allies until hopefully it's just the two of them left.
That's a hard call, actually. Because I don't think that Pan would accept that, for example. Because I think that Pan would want to split a Nexus with Gath or, Bettyheim.
I mean, really? I mean, I think they would want to, in a few senses. One is maybe they're looking at Erythia's food. Two, they have a good relationship with Gath. But Gath is also way scarier than Erythia. Like, I would rather empower somebody I'm not scared of rather than empower Gath. Like giving Gath half of Nexus is fucking spooky.
I actually don't think Gath is that scary this game.
Okay. Bettyheim, same thing. Bettyheim having
scary.
Half of Nexus is scary. Yeah.
Well, that's partly to me from the player, in that I think that like Owl and Aptus can absolutely use every pearl that you give them, and that's terrifying.
Yeah. Okay, but I think this is the start of a path to like, okay, we're actually going to have a good shot at winning the game. I think you have to split Nexus with somebody.
I think the only person you can do that with is TNG.
That was what I was thinking too. And I think that also gives TNG that, first of all, they have an established relationship. They've already split globals. And TNG probably is the least scaling of all their neighbors.
Yeah, TNG is at least conscientious about scaling, and they're investing into it. So I think that the player will be able to use their half of Nexus
right
very readily.
Yeah, I think so too. But they don't have other crazy scaling mechanics just because of the nation they have. But they would really love the gems to do stuff with. So
Yeah. No, that seems like a very reasonable path forward. It's just that I'm worried that that never puts you over the edge. Like you're still always the junior partner.
well, the only difference, so you're even if you split it 50-50 with TNG, which I think would be an amazing deal. Like if I were TNG and Erythia came to me and I trusted that they were going to give me 50% of the spoils, I would love that idea. The thing is, Erythia gets a little more value out of it just because all the pearls they're getting from Nexus, they can do pearl wish farming. So they can turn those, more efficiently. They're actually going to get more out of Nexus by a little bit than TNG will.
Yeah, but it's only by a little bit.
It's only by a little
and
bit.
You're also empowering someone who's much, much bigger than you.
Yeah. But I think that's what you have to do. And then you have to use that to make your position better.
I don't think, so I actually don't disagree with you. I think that that's like kind of the one person that they could do that with. But I still think that like, oh, Erythia has Nexus, we have to go kill them, is like a very good rallying cry. And then you're fighting Pangea and Gath and Xibalba at the same time. And then those three kill you.
Maybe. I mean, TNG may get involved. TNG may not want those three people to eat you. And they may want you to stay alive with Nexus. So, could Erythia and TNG, and then Vedheim's a free agent in that? Like, how does Vedheim interact? Because Vedheim definitely doesn't want Gath and Pangea getting bigger. But I think you're right in the sense that it would, like, focus a big shitstorm around Erythia when they cast it. But I think they have to. You can't not cast it.
I agree. Yeah, I actually do agree with you. I think that that's kind of like their path forward. But they also have to sort their army situation, and in my opinion, they have to do that first.
Yeah, I agree. Well, look at it.
They have to put.
We've solved it.
Together scary armies. Yeah.
We've solved it. I think it's a hard path to victory, but I think I can see it being a winnable position if they take these steps. If they sit on their laurels, if they don't build an army, if they don't split Nexus and they just put it up and then just get pounded by a shitstorm by literally all their neighbors, I think they're going to lose. But I think if they court TNG for a Nexus split,
or even if they put up Nexus when someone else is scarier than they are,
that's
plausible.
The one nice thing, I think splitting Nexus, because you probably know this. Arco split Nexus with Gath and Y'all's finals. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that came out relatively. I didn't know that until the game was over, but yeah.
Right. But I think it's a good thing. One of the nice things about splitting it is you just have two people going ham, casting whatever they can, whereas everybody else is like trying to keep all their gems in their pocket. So that's the other nice thing about splitting is you have two people just spending like
blood nonsense,
freaking crazy people. Yeah. So anyway, and in that sense, it's actually TNG's the ideal person to partner with in that front because TNG's going to be spending their massive gem income, right? So like you wouldn't want to partner with Vedheim because Vedheim's not going to be spending much. TNG's going to be putting a lot of gems into Nexus. So.
I mean, TNG would love to be partners with Nexus regardless of who cast it, I think.
Yeah.
For that exact reason, that they are spending all those gems every turn anyways.
Right. Okay. Any additional thoughts? Any other kind of tricks you think Erythia could pull out to maybe like different paths to winning?
So, I mean, I think that the army thing is the biggest thing, right? I mean, we've kind of, hammered this to death. But I actually think that, as you pointed out, the Deducados are such good combat mages that Erythia can put together a very, very viable Doom stack. They just have to go do it, and we haven't seen them do it yet.
Yeah. It's worth mentioning, just because you said it, like, what does it take to protect human mages? There's a bunch of things you can do. The Ankh, which he's probably got pretty good access to because he's Construction 8, is a great item for protecting human mages, but if he doesn't have it, still turn 1 life after death goes a long way, which just any lich can cast. Turn 1 fog warriors, big deal.
And they also have access to the fast casting item. The water astral thing. Yeah.
That was what I was going to say next, is that a lot of these important spells, like anti-magic, fog warriors, life after death, you probably for each of them want to consider, hey, do I want to do fast casting hat? It may not stop, or it's not going to stop an innate casting bone grinding. Like it won't go before that, but pretty much all the other stuff it's going to protect you from. So. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually do think that Erythia is one of the best scaling nations in LA. Like it's in my opinion a very very high tier LA nation. I'm just worried if from their current position. I think that they have a very hard road ahead of them.
Yeah. All right. Well, tune in next time. We're probably going to have some more slow turns because I kind of feel like the game. I feel like everybody kind of wants to consolidate for probably at least 3 or 4 more turns. But once
Yeah,
things start
agreed.
going down, it's going to be like fireworks, I think. So we'll see.
Yep, seems all right. Yeah, I think we're in for a couple slow turns, which are going to be diplomatically very interesting, but militarily probably a little less so.
Right. Oh, final thing to say in closing is the global slots are all full for the first time in the game. So now anytime somebody wants to cast something, they're going to have to overcast.
And that's going to be a big deal.
Yeah. All right. Well, Sai, as always, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks for hosting.
You're increasing the IQ of this cast by, at least a solid 40 points. So appreciate it. The average IQ, I should say. And yeah, viewers, if you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.